All right, it is 6:01, so we'll call the meeting to order. And then we'll stand for the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Do roll call. Oh my gosh, I never have to do roll call. Jill Maddock-Nelson, present. Do you want to introduce yourselves? Not introduce, but just say your name for roll call.
Linda Oginski. Amy Stetstring.
Thank you, because I would
That's
butcher
right.
yours. Anything for public comment?
No, we had nothing.
Okay. All right. So we'll move on to new business. Letter A is vacant position. So Amy, I asked you to bring kind of a summary. I know there's been some concerns or questions too about what we're doing with the vacant position. So I'm going to hand it off to you to just share what you guys as an admin team and buildings have worked out and have in place currently.
Yeah. So we have 2 ELA positions at the high school that are open, 1 math position, and then a long-term sub-math position that will be over in winter as that teacher returns. We have some special education teachers openings, and I'm going to leave that for the Pupil Service Sped Committee. And we lost 2 title teachers from summer till now. So that's kind of where we are overall on what we're looking at that we're missing in staffing. So what we had to do is really be creative and think through what our students need, what they need at the high school level as they're entering college, how we can best prioritize our students with their developmental skills as well. We know we have 8th graders here, and they're younger, and we have to think about their learning styles and their learning needs. So what we did for our English is we went with our English department, who I have to say were phenomenal problem solvers with myself and the admin. We have our English 12 and electives online through Wisconsin Virtual School. We felt that the virtual school could offer our students the best education for the subjects that we needed them to teach us, and they were able to accommodate all the students that we need to enroll. So we didn't have to say no to any students. We have 2 ELA teachers at the high school doing overflow classes to make sure that we can have in-person writing communication classes, because that's a really important class that 10th and 11th graders need. So they're doing those overflow classes. We also heard that we have some students that were looking to have a dual credit writing communication class, and that was really important on their track to college, and we wanted to make sure that we didn't not offer that. So we're actually working with North Central Technical College and offering a dual credit writing communication course that students can sign up for, so that they can make sure they're moving towards that college career that they've chosen to move that path, and making sure that they have what they need to make sure that if they can do that dual credit option.
So can they enroll in dual credit this semester?
They are already in it.
Perfect.
Yep,
Awesome.
so Mr. Rogers went around, made sure he talked to all the students that could do it, that needed it, made sure we got them in, talked to their families, and they are in. The class, I think, had 1 class already, but the teacher said we can definitely get your students in, and they are already up and running
Awesome.
on the dual credit. Yep. We also navigated all different options to help support our students. So we looked at our students' developmental abilities. Like I said before, we know that our seniors will be entering the workforce, college, or trade school route. In this day and age, remote work and virtual learning is what we do in the world, and those technology skills are going to be very important. So we knew that they could handle that 21st century career and college readiness better than our 8th graders could, which is why we opted to do those elective courses for 12th grade online. They have more of a experience, more maturity as they are looking at those classes. Those classes are supervised and supported in their learning. So the teacher has hours that I know that they can get support from them. We have a supervisor that's helping and people checking in on their academic success. And they also will be receiving grades that will factor into their GPAs. So we make sure that those will get on their report card from Wisconsin Virtual School through our school here in Anago. We also have our geometry classes online due to that long-term substitute kind of opening. When that staff member returns, we will be pulling those students off virtual if they are struggling or if they need that in-person instruction. So this is just in the meantime to get us up on geometry, but that will be back in person. And that online course is being supervised by a former teacher with a math background who could help support the students. So we wanted to really make sure if they were virtual that we could offer them that support. They can always ask questions if they need to.
Did you say a retired math?
A former teacher, I'm not sure what his
Okay.
licensure was, but I know he has a math background.
Okay, perfect.
It which is why we put them with our geometry students.
And with Wisconsin virtual as well, so.
Yep, that's still Wisconsin virtual. Yep.
Can I pipe in here?
Yes, please.
All geometry won't be back
Yes.
in person for second semester. And the supervisor in there has an alternative education background working with online instruction in the past.
So we'll look at the students who's being successful, who might need that extra support, and those students will come back in person for geometry.
Okay.
But there'll still be some geometry courses online for the students who are being successful in that modality of learning. They'll continue on that.
Okay.
Okay. So I know that there's been talk out there, I want to address that. It seems easy to just look at our staff and look at licensures and then move people to different positions, especially in that ELA position. So anyone with an ELA background, it looks very easy to just pull that license, pull that person and say, they're going to teach ELA. We looked at all that, and for a few reasons, we decided not to do that. So if we pull from another department or school, we're creating open positions in that building and creating a gap there. But also from outside looking in, this is just a quick fix, but we have to be mindful regarding our federally funded programs. So pulling an instructional coach or title teacher who usually have the ELA background or that 316 licensure for reading to fill an ELA position has financial problems and then unintended consequences that maybe somebody who's not in the school system might not know about. So I wanted to make sure I explained the decision of not pulling somebody with an ELA license at this point. So we are identified as AGR schools at the elementary level. So AGR is the Achievement Gap Reduction Program through the state, and the money we receive has stipulations and requirements. So the AGR program allows our participating schools, which is Anago, to meet the obligations of our contract by implementing one of the following strategies. So we have to make sure we either have one-to-one tutoring, which when you look at the scores at Anago, that is not helping a majority of our students. We need more support than just one-to-one. That's more for a school that has like a smaller population of students needing support. We have a larger, and hopefully in the future not as large, of group of students. So one-to-one tutoring is not an option for us to make a bigger enough impact on our student achievement. The other option is to have less than 18 students in a classroom, kindergarten through third, which we have some that we've used our AGR money for, but others that could not qualify. So we have that money sitting out there. And the last strategy is instructional coaching. So that is why our instructional coaching program is so important, because we do get federal, like state funding for that AGR support. So pulling coaches out to put them in a classroom deficits us on that federal or the state funding part of AGR. So I just want to make sure there's decisions behind not pulling certain people. And so we receive that AGR money and we only can use it in certain capacities. So instructional coaching is our best strategy at this point to support all students, because they support all students. And I know the next part of the agenda is instructional coaching, but they close that opportunity gap in between our low income students and the students at grade level, not only here but statewide. So removing a coach would mean we'd lose some of that funding, or we'd have to leave that AGR funding out there and not utilize it, which means it just goes back to the state, which we want to use all of our money fiscally responsible to make sure we're impacting all of our students. We also currently lost 2 title teachers. So in order to be a title teacher, you have to have a 316 license through DPI, which means you can also teach ELA, but we are identified as a school-wide title. We receive funding from a title grant, which is federally funded, that specifically defines how we can use that funding. So our staff with 316 licensures, that our Title I staff are supporting all of our students and supporting our students who struggle academically. So these staff members are supporting our schools. We also support parochial schools as well, so Peace Lutheran and All Saints. So we can't just pull these people and put them in another position without fiscal repercussions and issues with DPI. So that's kind of where our mindset were when we looked at all of our staff, looked at our staffing shortages, looked at what we needed to do. On the outside, it looks like it's easy to pull, but in the back end of the financial piece, we have to have certain requirements in place so that we can make sure we're meeting all the requirements that we said to the state that we were going to meet.
And I think one thing to add to that is, especially for the title funds, they are, we get audited for that, and they're very strict about what you can and what you can't use the money for. And if we don't use it the appropriate way or use all of it, there comes a time that we lose that if we don't use those funds. So we try to leverage that and make sure everybody with the 316. In fact, we've been working with Ms. Fossbender trying to shift people around so that we are leveraging all of our federal dollars to free up local money to cover those positions.
Thank you, that was very helpful. Yes, okay. Anything else that you want to share?
Just that we're gonna
Yeah.
continue looking for teachers to fill those open positions, and that we want to continue to make Antigo that place where people wanna come and work in our schools and be a part of the great work that we're doing here, so we need to, continue down that path to get more people to come here and support our schools and our students.
Absolutely. Thank you. Okay, we'll move on to letter B, instructional coaches.
Okay.
So I did ask for this to go on the agenda as well because I've gotten a lot of questions over time about the why behind instructional coaching, how we use them. I've had similar questions too. And so I asked to bring it on because I thought it was a good time to see what we're doing with our coaches, what their role is, how we're utilizing them, how we know their effectiveness. So I'll hand it off.
Yes. So yes, as we're going through, I want to talk about not only the instructional coaches, but how sometimes other positions are looked at as coaches and they're actually not. So I think some of the misconception is we have so many coaches here when actually we're referring to title teachers or interventionists, which is a completely different category. So
Maybe you
Yep.
also mention the fact that the coaching program itself looks differently this year
Yes.
than in the past.
past.
So it is a different change, it's a change.
it's going to be a program that moves forward that supports all students, and I'll get to kind of some of that documentation piece, but there are going to be some requirements around what that looks like. So it's not just we coach and there's no like requirements behind that. So previously I mentioned that they're part of the AGR program defined by PBIS through Wisconsin. So just some history. Last year there were 4 instructional coaches in Antigo, 1 at 4K, 1 at the elementaries for part of the year, and then I believe she went back into a classroom, 1 at the middle school, and 1 at the high school. So Antigo last year had 4 instructional coaching positions. This year we added 1 more instructional coaching position so that we would have 2 through the elementary grades K-3. We're going to keep that one at 4K. So I think there's been some confusion regarding the differences between title teachers, instructional coaches, and interventionists, because I've even heard within our staff, we call everyone coaches, and then that leads to thinking we have like 20 coaches here, when actually we don't. We have the same number as last year, except we added 1, and that they do a different role than the other ones. They also get funded differently through AGR than the other ones. So we can't call all of our educators instructional coaches. That's not a factual point. We do have 5 currently. So title teachers are paid from the title grant, which is federally funded. Our instructional coaches support the achievement of all students. So that is where we're going to get that differentiation for not only our students who struggle, but our students who are proficient and advanced to push them higher. Interventionists support our ELMSS system by supporting small group instruction and interventions to make sure that our students are performing at or above grade level. So there's kind of like 3 categories of people that are always like mashed into one name of coach, when really we need to make sure we're calling them different things because they are federally funded differently. We also have a reading coordinator. So I've also heard the reading coordinator specialist position be called a coach as well, which is a misconception because statute 118.015 under reading instruction through Wisconsin says each school district shall employ a reading specialist certified by the department to develop and coordinate a comprehensive reading curriculum in grades K through 12. So we need this. We know that our academic achievement scores are not what they need to be. We also know that our new reading bill, that Wisconsin Act 20, has gone through, and that's going to completely change kind of how we work forward in the ELA and with reading. So there's an extensive amount of work that's going to go into that this year and into the following year when a lot of those stipulations have to be completed. And so our instructional coaches are supporting the achievement growth needed for all of our students, very separate from our reading coordinator and specialist, who does the role of the district K-12 programming for reading, and will be helping with our Wisconsin Act 20 bill as we move forward. So another misconception, I think, is that instructional coaches are evaluative. They are not. They are not evaluative. They work directly with teachers to help them improve their instructional practices. They provide feedback. They support through what we call coaching cycles, which means they're not in every classroom every day. They have coaching cycles. So they work with a few teachers for a few weeks, helping them, supporting them, taking a group of small students, helping in the classroom, providing feedback, and they're monitoring their other classes that they support, and then they move into a coaching cycle with those teachers and then monitor the ones they've already done. So it's kind of like a flow through. They can't get to all the teachers that they serve all at the same time, but we call them coaching cycles. So what we want to, especially at the elementary, we have one coach that's doing kindergarten and first, and the other coach who's focused on second and third, to make sure we're targeted on the support that is needed to help those teachers. They are data coaches as well, who support teachers in their work with our FastBridge, which is our benchmark and progress monitoring system, with interventions. They're curriculum specialists, so they've already, I know at the elementary level, have been working on Into Reading, which is our new resource, and making sure that they're actually providing where to find those resources for the teachers within that program, because it's very comprehensive and great. But when you first get into it, you're like, ooh, there's a lot of information here. So they're helping with that as well. And then My Perspectives, which is the 612 ELA resource. They've already been supporting them, lesson planning, differentiation. I think that's very important as we look at our data here in Anago. We have a lot of students who are proficient in advanced, but they kind of stay within that range. And we want to make sure we're focused on our proficient and advanced kids and moving them as well. And not just focusing on our students who struggle, but all of our students. And that's what coaches can help too. They're learning facilitators, and they are providing professional development to our educators and staff as well, because they have that specialty and that background. So they're the continuous professional development for our teachers as we continue to build our toolbox, like build within Anago, so that sometimes we don't have to go outside for that professional development. They have the skill set to train on FastBridge, to train on EduClimber, to help staff on some of those pieces. On Dreambox that we use at the elementary and middle school level. We have Waggle now, which is part of our Into Reading. It's very exciting. The technology portion of that, where our students use that to enhance their skills, and we can really dive into that data. All that is encompassed under what coaches do within the classroom. They have some documentation that they need to do as well. They're constantly documenting their coaching cycles. They're taking percentages of what percentage they're spending the day in coaching in the classroom and supporting teachers, and what part they're helping with PLCs, our professional learning communities, helping to lead those along with the principals and the building principals on those, and making sure that we are focused on the standards and the right work that's going to lead to that student achievement for our students. So they have a big job to do, but I believe that teachers are going to continue to see that as a supportive piece, especially at the elementary, because they haven't really had that at elementary the last few years. So helping them kind of keep pacing across all elementary schools. One of the things is to ensure that no matter what elementary school you go to, you're getting that equitable education as you move into 4th grade, that everyone's getting that same kind of pacing on the instructional practices, pacing on the resource, making sure that they're keeping up on that data, so that when we move forward, we can ensure that that learning moves into middle school as well.
That's a lot.
That is a lot.
So can you summarize how we can track our data to ensure that we're utilizing our instructional coaches effectively?
Yes, so when we look at the data so we're just finishing our FastBridge data. That's going to lead us to our interventions and kind of specifically targeting groups of students, who's going to work with title, which students are going to work with our interventionists, and then the coaches will work around that as well to see which classrooms need more support. Not based on the teacher always, but the students within that classroom. If we're seeing a large gap of learning in one classroom based on where students have come into that room, then they can help support that classroom a little bit more. So in essence, you should see the progress monitoring that is done weekly on our Tier 3 students, and bi-weekly or weekly on our Tier 2 students, be continuously increasing based on that support at that Tier 1 level, because they're working with all the teachers, they're working with all the students, and supporting in that way. So we should see all of our FastBridge data come winter be an increase, and one of those components is instructional coaching and great teaching by our teachers, but all that combined.
And another data point maybe to mention too is that when they're doing those coaching cycles and documenting, they have records that they keep, and there's data from the start of the coaching cycle to the end to look at the growth of the students, the student outcomes.
Okay, thank you.
Yeah.
Anything else on coaches?
No, I think the biggest misconception is how many we have and the work that they do. and that they're in a bunch of classrooms, and that's, you might not see them in your classroom, but that doesn't mean they are not working. They are in another coaching cycle. And another way to be transparent, I've asked all of the coaches this year, they are all providing a weekly schedule to their building principal, to myself, and to the teachers that they serve, so that teachers always know, if I don't have the coach today, but I do know where she is or where he is, and I can make sure I can reach out, so that it's very transparent on where people are working, what they're doing, what their role is in each classroom, so that everyone knows where our coaches are, because we are leveraging them in a big way here in Anago.
Yep. Thank you.
Yes.
Is there anything else that you want to share, Linda?
No?
Okay.
I think Amy covered it all. That's really good. She did a fine job.
Thank you. All right, and then letter C, assessment calendar. So I also shared in the past, we would have assessment calendar, let me start over. In committee, discuss upcoming assessments, and then share out, obviously, after results. And then also, within that discussion, did we talk about surveys too? I can't remember now.
Within the discussion.
You and I.
Yes.
Okay.
Yep, so we will be doing surveys. We don't have them ready yet, and we
That's
want to
okay.
make sure they're district-wide. But yes, we will be serving. The instructional coaches send out a survey as they kind of get more used to the classrooms that they're working with, but they will send out surveys to the teachers that they serve, and we have some ways to check on that of how that's going.
Okay.
Do you want to talk
Okay,
about
go
the
ahead.
assessment? Yeah.
No,
So
go ahead.
we finished, we're in the middle of FastBridge assessments. So FastBridge is our benchmark that we do in fall, winter, and spring. It's also what we use to progress monitor our students. So this year, we did it earlier, and there was some intentionality around that as well, and intentionality around how we provided and proctored that assessment. So FastBridge is 4K till 11th grade. 4K actually added some assessments because FastBridge has updated their system and allowed for more data points for our 4K students, so we're really excited about that. We did it earlier than in past years because we know we have a need, especially in ELA in this district, and we have to make sure we have that data so we can start running our title groups, putting our interventions in place, and then providing that enrichment for students who know and are already proficient, on track, or advanced. So we wanted to make sure we got that data as soon as possible. And the other reason we did that is because we did it in a different way, especially at the elementary. So 4K kindergarten and first grade take a test called early reading and early math. And what that means is it has to be proctored one-on-one with the student. So if you have a class of 22 students and you as the teacher have to proctor 22 and then another 22 math, that's taking up a lot of your instructional time in the month of September, where you could be providing instruction and doing small groups and moving on with the interreading and the My Math programs. So what we did was we took all of our interventionists, our title teachers and our coaches, and myself, and we actually made a schedule where we went school to school, and we all sat in the gym and we tested a whole class at once. So we had 17 to 18 staff members in there. The kids came in, the teacher brought them in, they were wonderful. Kids sat with us, we finished all of their testing. So all of the testing is done in 4 days now instead of taking weeks to get done. Not by anyone's fault, just because it takes so long to do and to proctor. We have all of them done except for students who are absent, and we're going to do some makeups next week. So that worked out really well, and we're done with the testing, and now we're moving on to the next part of the process of looking at assessment and saying, what do we need to do holistically as a school, targeted down to that individual child. So that went really well. I know that we're finishing up a few tests tomorrow, and then, like I said, we have some makeups of students that we're missing. But all the way up to 11th grade, and our goal this year on our district SIP, our contingent improvement plan, is 100% of our students will take 100% of our assessments. So we need to make sure we get that 100%. Now, if a student has in their IEP, if they're a student who receives special education services that they don't test, we do honor that, obviously, because it is an IEP, but everyone else will be taking those assessments so that we can get some clear data, know where we are, and know how to move forward. That's kind of FastBridge, so we're finishing that up, and then on September 12th, we are doing our pre-ACT. So we're doing 8th grade through 11th grade pre-ACT this year because we thought it was important, and Mr. Rogers has been working diligently on making sure we have adequate data at the beginning of the year on our students so that we know how to progress through the year to make sure that we are raising those ACT scores and raising those pre-ACT scores in spring. So it's going to be new for some students, but everyone's taking it, 8th through 11th, so we're going to get some good data out of that and back from pre-ACT.
Awesome. That's very impressive with the elementary, bringing all hands on deck and getting the assessment done early.
I have to give kudos to the instructional coaches, the interventionist title. They all came together as a group, and there's new people and new faces and people in new positions. And the principals at the elementary are wonderful. They had the next class right there, so as kids filtered out, the next one's filtered in, and the system worked really well, but could not have been done if everyone didn't have a hand and a part in it to make sure that it was successful. So I sent thank yous to the principals as well, because they were right on time with the next class. We didn't miss a beat, and then we made sure that we are proctoring our students who English is not their first language, and making sure that we have some data, that we are providing that early Spanish test, which I don't think has been done before at maybe any district I've worked in the past, but that's a newer thing that we want to make sure that if a student isn't speaking English at the level that we need them to be, to make sure they're grade level, but they can speak Spanish. It's good to have that data to know where that student is, to make sure that we're addressing those EL concerns.
Thank you very much.
Yes.
Anything else with assessment calendar?
No, we'll continue updating it
Yep.
and making sure you guys are updated on the board as well, as we go, if things have to shift or times have to shift or dates. But we're pretty set on where we need to be right now, which is great as we look forward into, not winter yet, but that's always our goal, is the next assessment time, that we want to see those scores higher and be able to celebrate with our kids and with our families.
Yes, absolutely. Okay. Well, I don't have anything else either, so we can adjourn. And our next CNA, is it October 2nd, or are we going on a Thursday?
No, it will stay on a Monday.
Okay.
Into Thursday because of,
Labor Day.
yeah.
Oh, yeah.
Holiday. Yeah.
Yep, okay. The next CNI meeting will be Monday, October 2nd. All right, thank you.
Thanks.
Sure. All right, let's call the meeting to order.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
I can take.
No.
I can do that.
Glenda was taking notes.
Oh,
for the
all
first
right.
one.
Sorry.
Do you want to take roll too? Rock that?
Sure.
All right, go for it.
Kristen Matt Miller,
Here.
Angie Schreiber,
Here.
Jill Maddock Nelson,
Here.
All right, any public comment? I would imagine not. There's no one here. All right, we'll start with seclusion and restraint.
Yes, so this fulfills our mandated reporting that we have to complete each fall. And looking at the numbers from last year, we had a total of 25 incidents. Do you guys want me to go through the spreadsheet by each school? Do you want me to? I've never done this before. I'm on the very first seclusion, USDA,
You can't go.
sorry, seclusion and restraint reporting.
Okay.
So we'll be reporting last year's numbers for this year.
I just have one question. Has everything been closed out from last year? So meaning like all the reports are in, whether it's this, whether it's IEPs, whether it's whatever, are they all in?
So we found a few opportunities to finish up some IEPs.
Okay.
But yes, with the help of John Humphrey and Carla, we are able to be working through that. We found one more today.
Okay.
I contacted a few parents. We got a hold of case managers that are here now to finish some of that stuff that was left open, and they were gracious and did it right away.
Okay.
So yes, we are working through that. We had, I don't think we hit the double digits. Maybe we had like 9.
Okay.
Um,
Was there a
but-
common commonality that why they weren't completed? On, like, when it was, you know what I mean?
I can't say it, I can't say it was, like one particular person, I can't say it was one particular school.
Okay.
It was, just a few different instances.
Okay.
All but one is not with us anymore, like all of them are not with us anymore, except
Okay.
one person. But they just had a slight misunderstanding
Okay.
with, didn't get the parent signature and upload it, so we called on that
Oh, okay.
today.
Okay.
But as far as having kids with their IEPs being met and their minutes and being serviced, yes. We had a lot of transfers in particular at the high school. We had 12 transfers in last week, Monday. They are not open enrollments, they're students that moved to the area, and the numbers keep climbing, so.
Didn't mean
Great
to
question.
interrupt.
No, those are great questions. Okay, so I'm on the USDA Seclusion and Restraint reporting. It goes by school, so if you look, East had 5 restraints, no seclusions. North had 1 seclusion, no restraints. West had 5 seclusions, 9 restraints. The middle school had 1 restraint. The high school had 1 seclusion, 3 restraints, so a total of 7 seclusions and 18 restraints. And that kind of breaks it down by each school. Number of incidents for East was 5. 2 pupils were involved. Both were students with disabilities. North, 1 incident, 1 pupil. That child also was a student with disabilities. West had 14 overall incidents that involved 4 different pupils. 3 of them had disabilities. The middle school had 1 incident, 1 pupil, 1 with disabilities. And the high school had 4 incidents that were recorded, 3 pupils, and 1 of those had a disability, a defined disability.
That's the shoot.
So overall, it looks like the numbers were a little bit lower than the 21-22 school year. Some of the requirements, other than reporting, are starting off the school year, the seclusion and restraint fillable version, if you want to click on that. All IAs and special education staff were refreshed of the processes, which is the next sheet. Principals also were refreshed of the process and reminded, and it's on the next sheet, of what to do when a seclusion or restraint happens and the paperwork that needs to be filled out here. This then gets filled out within 3 days. It needs to be emailed, hand-delivered, or mailed to parents and guardians. And right away on the same day, within a day, there's a debriefing.
And do you get a copy of it also?
Yep, so I'm gonna share the seclusion and or restraint process and procedures. That explains it a little bit more in detail. So I'm gonna take time again in October, and I don't know if it'll be a PLC or a collab day, but just to review with all staff, or I'm gonna have the principals review with all staff this process again, just to make sure we're all on the same page, because we have some new people coming in. Also checking to make sure that the folks who are on what are the response teams are involved in this process, that we have people who are nonviolent crisis intervention trained, and we do. So to schedule some of that training, looking to schedule hopefully one this fall and hopefully a refresher in the spring. We have people in-house who can train, so paying them a stipend is a significant cost reduction versus hiring out. Do you guys have any questions? The new law that is updated, we record now for any student. So it wouldn't matter if you are a student with an IEP or not. Like if you have to put hands on kids, you have to report it.
What is the process for, so say I'm a parent and I have my child is struggling, what is the process? I mean, so like, I've heard instances of, parents trying to reach out to the teacher and then they get directed to the counseling center or something like that, and then it doesn't get any further than that.
Are you asking specific to seclusion and restraint?
No, I'm asking for IEP.
So,
Oh,
Well-
so a parent requests for an IEP process.
but my question is, if this is within our agenda item, I'm gonna defer that to you as chair.
Okay, I see what you're saying.
I would say it's likely not, but it's something that we can definitely add to the agenda to go for our next meeting.
Okay.
To go more in depth in the IEP process.
Yeah. Yeah.
We could certainly do that.
There has been
Thanks,
questions on it, yeah.
What the process is for requesting an IEP, is that what you mean?
Yes, and where can parents find that information?
We do have a process, so that's a good thing to know.
That'd be a good presentation for you, Jasmine.
Definitely to do this. All right, anything else for seclusion and restraint?
Do you guys have any questions? The main thing is that everyone is informed and to keep that continuous communication evolving to make sure that we are following our due diligence with the law.
All right, we will move on to the behavior expectations grid.
So I wasn't sure what the behavior committee was last year, but I wanted to keep the similar, presentation. So right now the grids that are presented are being used at the elementary level, the middle school level, and the high school level. Do you have any specific questions about the grids in themselves?
So there's been no changes to the grids, correct? Is that what I'm hearing?
I asked if there are any significant changes, and when I reached out to each of the teams at the elementary, middle, and high school, they said no, right now there hasn't been. The updating of the date.
So I would say that should be our focus point this year. Last year, it was more that we were collecting data about behaviors. What were our main behaviors? Was it repeat offenses, same kids, more kids, how it kind of went up and down throughout the year. So every quarter we just got a report on the numbers. At the end of the year, we kind of asked to use those numbers to create a more sturdy handbook to give the teachers more support as far as setting expectations, what discipline will look like. I would say we received some of that, especially at the high school level, some at the middle school level, less at the elementary level. And so now I'm thinking that since we've had that data and we've looked at it, how can we use that now to create a more specific grid and more support from the teachers on that end? Like specifically, we were seeing that foul language and disrespect for teachers was something that was high in all three categories. So what can we do at the elementary level to make those numbers be lower at the high school instead of just as high, if not higher?
To be proactive instead of
Right,
reactive.
correct. So that, last year it was mostly, you came on later, but that was pretty much, it was just reporting the numbers and then kind of some strategies they had, like they met with some of the behavioral specialists at certain point in time and painted a picture of what some of the interventions looked like, which is good, but we want to be more proactive. So how can we use that information and on the forend to prevent?
This was helpful because I wasn't sure I saw.
Yeah, I meant to have.
What is it?
I know what you
And I'm like, absolutely not. This is fantastic because. Do you want to hear a little bit now, or do you want to wait until next meeting?
Go ahead.
Okay.
Yeah,
So met with some of our PBIS coaches today, and an outside consultant that has already been secured through a CISA contract from last year. We have 15 days over, 12 or 15, and sat down and asked about what work was done last year and where is it going. And the staff said we're really happy that you're on board because we are moving forward. So one of the things we're doing moving forward is, not all the staff know this yet. I met with the key team. The district PBIS team, we are going to look at how do we collect data and how do we collect it consistently across the district. Because I haven't seen that yet. We're spending time. We're going to spend money we're gonna spend services. I need to make sure that we're being efficient and ethical with that process. So, looking at using EduClimber as our tool to collect the behaviors, but then also be proactive with having one behavior tracking form, K through 12, that just collects the information you need to collect. Defining then at each building, teaching the staff, what are expectations tier 1, K through 12. Met with some CISA EMLSS consultants who are free to support what does that structure look like at the high school. Because we have people, but no one could point me to a system. A system means if I fall off the face of the earth, God forbid, it can still go on without me. I didn't see that. So with a lot of people working really, really hard, we need a system. There's a lot of emotions surrounding that mindset right now, but it can't just be you, or just you, or just you, or just Matt, or just Clint, or just Scott. Right, so to build that mindset, to build some processes, to build some steps, starting with using the tools we have, we're already paying for, and having something consistent that we use at each building, and then what will tier 2 look like? So one of the defined timelines that we're going to let, obviously, the district team have some wiggle room, but I think that freedom within fences really keeps us going in the right direction. So the expectation would be by November, the end of November, we are all using that. And then we're having consistent data brought to our student meetings. And then we're looking at the whole child. So when I was here earlier listening to Amy, and I speak very well together, because when we are talking about a child's behavior, is it because they're not doing well because they don't know how to? So are we seeing consistent behaviors during math? Are we seeing consistent behaviors? And then the other piece, really looking at where are the buildings at with, you can be firm, fair, and trauma sensitive all in the same breath.
Yes,
You don't need to
absolutely.
yell, you don't need to be mean, but doors are closed. Okay, we're gonna close, and sometimes Mrs. Burkon and her staff would have to teach near the door. Because that's what you sometimes have to do in elementary. Because sometimes kids are gonna wanna run. At the high school, be present. Be present. Be present, build those relationships. So defining what behaviors are, but then having a process like, okay, we have reached X amount of infractions, what's our next step? What's our next step in our system? Make it sustainable. If we put people, is that sustainable?
No.
It's not sustainable. So just really getting through that point of let's look at our data, let's use our data. And then coming from the lens of serving special ed, they are all our kids at tier 1 first. So how do we look for efficiencies to work together to support in a way that maybe we haven't before, but we can do it. So that's some of the things that we're looking at doing moving forward, and we have some time booked out. Amy and I are going to look, actually, we just talked, to look more specifically at each of those professional learning days or collab days. What does that look like for each level? But then really training the principals to lead that. You know, training the principals to be that whole child leader at that building. So, yeah, I think it can happen. I know it can happen.
And I think Mrs. Burkhan brings up a good point about the universal level, meaning that's what everybody gets. And the problem is that that's where it is. That's the location, is at that universal level. And just like what Ms. Stutzering talked about earlier, we can't intervene our way out. We can't continue to focus on just the interventions. It's what are we doing for all kids to combat that before it becomes a problem. So, and I do have to say yes, the two of them speak the same language, which is very important and very beneficial because their worlds overlap a lot. So.
Good. Does that include consequences?
Absolutely. There are sometimes natural consequences. And don't get me wrong, I'm not saying that you come in with that mindset of if someone doesn't comply, but it's like, wait a minute. We've taught this X amount of times. This is our expectation. How we approach it, our tone, how clear we are with our expectations. Thinking about the middle and high school, right? They're going to be entering our workforce. we are doing them a disservice if we don't have some sort of teaching and some sort of boundaries.
Right. I
We
agree
really
100%.
are. Because what employer, what tech school, what trade school, what college is gonna allow maybe some behaviors to happen? None. So absolutely. There's actually a lot of natural consequences that work quite well.
And I don't know about you guys, but I feel like that was one of the pieces that we were really missing in previous years, because there's all kinds of data out there that shows PBIS works as long as you have that consequence portion of it. If you don't have that, it's a disaster.
Right.
And there's lots of research, saying that, so. Yeah.
Inconsistency,
Yep.
Yes.
district-wide.
Yeah.
Exactly.
So I think a big piece for staff, at least that some staff have shared with me, is what's the consequence or outcome, and it's inconsistent. When do we use it? When do we not? Or the transitions, so elementary to middle school.
Mm-hmm.
What was allowable in one setting no longer is in some like in a minor way or a drastic way, but so there was a lack of consistency and a lack of when is something enforced.
Mhm.
Maybe I shouldn't say a lack of understanding. Maybe it was in place, but not well communicated. I'm not sure.
Okay, that's helpful.
I think consistent expectations are, it has to be.
Well, not only with students, but like everybody. I mean, that life just goes so much smoother if you know what's expected of you,
Right.
In various situations, so.
Like, either get on board or get off the train.
Right.
Eventually, it has to get to that point, though. I mean, if you set the date that the end of November, everybody's going to be doing this, everybody's going to be doing this. That's just
Right.
how it goes.
Correct, I will monitor. That's why I would like you to be evaluated, like what's happening.
Yep.
Because, yes, I have, yep.
I'm good.
Good.
Anything else?
No. Thank you
Alright.
for taking those notes and thanks for clarifying that, so we could have more.
Sounds good. All right. Our next meeting will be October 2nd.
We're adjourned.
Adjourn at 7:30.